Let's get both Garry Tonon and Thanh Le up right now. And there's the champion, Thanh Le. Good morning to you, Thanh Le.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me on.
And there's the challenger with stars and stripes on his shoulder, Garry Tonon. G'day, Gary. Just a single hit'll do. There you go. We got Garry Tonon. All right. Well, this one is going to be good. Again, in December, 1X goes down. Biggest show in one history. Thanh Le in a title defense against Garry Tonon, who has been laying waste to the featherweight division. And you know what? I'm going to start without formalities. I'm going to start without introductions. I'm going to start straight away, Babe Ruth style. Call your shot. Let's go to the challenger first, Garry Tonon. Gary, how do you win the belt from Thanh Le? How is it done come December?
I would say second round submission via rear naked choke. That would be my guess. I think first round. I think he has a lot of time to prepare for this. I think he's going to be able to scramble out of a lot of things. I think it's going to be tough to submit him first round. I think he's going to get really tired. And then I think by the second round, I've worn him down enough that I get to his back and I submit him.
Gary, why would you question the gas tank on Thanh Le?
Well, I wouldn't. It's not so much necessarily that I would question the gas tank in his previous fights. I actually, arguably, he's actually had some really some fights where he's been in some really bad grappling exchanges and then immediately knocked the guy out the next round. So I actually, in his previous fights, I really can't criticize too hard, to be honest. But I just think I'm different. I just think I think it has less to do with him and more to do with what I think about myself.
Does that believe? So I'm interpreting that as your work rate will be so constant and so much volume that is what you think will tire out Thanh Le and allow you to submit him in the second?
Yeah, it's not so much that I necessarily believe Thanh is going to be so exhausted that like anybody in the world could submit him. I just think he'll be a little bit more tired than he would have been first round. It'll be a little bit easier for me to submit him. I think that most people in the world wouldn't be able to submit him second round, but I think Garry Tonon can.
Thanh Le, there's Gary's call. Let's hear from you, champ. Make your call. Babe Ruth it for us. How do you defeat Garry Tonon at 1X to retain the strap?
All right, since we're being specific, let's go third or fourth round, head kick knockout.
You believe you'll catch him with a head kick?
I do. You know, I think as I've shown in my previous fights and movements well, I think I do a good job of, you know, making sure that openings come. I think I'm gonna do a good job of, you know, keeping him in an uncomfortable state while he's on the feet and open up that opportunity and try to land that money shot.
This really is a classic battle of a striker versus a grappler. And Thanh Le, have you seen something in Gary's previous performances that leads you to believe you can catch him with a head kick as opposed to a liver shot or a punch to the jaw or any other strike? Is there something you've seen you've gone, okay, that I can expose?
I would say I'm stealing some of Gary's answers here, but I'd say it's a little less about him and more about what I plan on creating and what I plan on doing with my game plan and my openings. But yeah, I mean, obviously he's made big jumps in his striking. I made big jumps in my grappling. Do I think if we did a grappling match that I'd submit him? Probably not. Do I think if we end up 2-3 rounds on the feet that he's gonna be able to withstand or not catch a shin to the dome? I don't think so. So obviously that's why we're in there. That's why we're trying to find this shit out. We got to battle it out and figure it out, right?
I wonder which one's the more superior. Is Gary's grappling ability more superior than Thanh Le's striking ability? And that's
definitely more proven. It's definitely more credited and awarded. He's won the fucking big dog tournaments. He's beat the bad guys. So who knows?
Garry, your thoughts? Do you think your grappling ability far exceeds or just exceeds or completely exceeds the striking ability of Thanh Le?
Well, I hate to tag along with exactly what he's saying also. But I mean, he is the world champion in mixed martial arts in my weight class. So, I mean, I agree. I don't know if I necessarily agree that I'm necessarily more proven. Perhaps in terms of accomplishments in grappling, maybe I've been doing that aspect of it a little bit longer. Perhaps it's really hard for me to say. I actually don't know like his full striking history. So I don't know. Maybe he's been doing Taekwondo since he was 3 and he's won like world championship forever. I have no idea. But yeah, as far as like the level of striking that he brings to the table versus the level of grappling that I bring to the table, I mean, I'm always going to be a little bit biased, regardless, towards me. I think relatively highly of myself, and yeah, I think I bring a higher level of grappling to the table than he brings striking. But at the end of the day, the real question is, does that matter? And the answer I don't think is the answer I think is no. I think that regardless, when if there's a difference between the levels of striking and the levels of grappling, either man can get caught. So regardless of of whether or not we're going to turn this into a pissing contest as to who's the best, the best in terms of grappling, striking, whatever the case may be, I mean, there's a much better chance that he catches me with something in striking, and there's a much chance that I catch him with something in grappling. So I mean, that's why everybody's going to be tuning in to see this, because we really don't 100% know what's going to go down when we get out there in that cage.
Tunley, this division is so stacked. I mean, it's a murderer's row. There are killers in the featherweight division. And do you believe that at this stage of his career, 6-0, sure, Garry is undefeated, but do you believe that he's biting off more than he can chew, going for the world championship against you now?
No, I think that's why he's on a little bit of a fast track, right? Because of his skills in a certain aspect of his game. I mean, you put him on the ground against any of those guys, and we've seen how that's gone. I'd like to think that it's not going to go so easy when he matches up against me. Obviously, I'm high on myself as well. But yeah, it's a tough division. We have primarily strikers in the division, but we do have some good grapplers in there as well. Do I think they're as good as Garry? No. Do I think they could give him a little bit of trouble because it's a mixed martial arts fight? Yeah, of course. But I don't think he's biting off more than he can chew, because he's a high level grappler, competed at the highest level of his sport, and he wants to transfer over to MMA. Now, obviously, there's holes in my game, there's holes in his game, and I'm looking to capitalize on those, and he's looking to capitalize on mine. But do I think I get to cheat because we get to start on the feet? Yes. Do I think that opportunity is going to be, presented to me first and foremost, and I got to capitalize? Yeah. But it's a fight. It's a fucking fight. And that's why we're doing this, because who the hell knows what's going to happen? We don't have to talk a bunch of shit to each other for you guys to tune in. Y'all better tune in. This is going to be the baddest fight you've ever seen in a while. I'm going to do my best to take his head off his body. He's going to do his best to rip my limbs apart from my body. That's just the way it's going to go. He's a great competitor. I'm a great competitor. We're going to fuck each other up.
Tunley, there's an old saying that you're not really a champion until you've defended the belt. Do you feel added pressure that you've maybe never felt before in your life, given that this isn't just any fight? It's against a great opponent, but more so you are defending the strap to prove to those people that use that old saying that you are a true champion to defend the strap.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't give a shit about any of that, any of the murmurs or the, talk this, talk that. I don't care. I do this for me. I'm so glad I'm able to put on good shows for the fans and for media and the promotion and getting there and earn respect from my opponent. Like, that's a big part of it. But I do this for me. I do this for my family. I do this because I love it. There's nothing that could ever happen outside of the cage or promotion that could ever put any more pressure than I put on myself. And then I ride with that. That's what I like to believe makes me a champion. And that's what I like to believe makes Garry a champion. And that's why he's fighting this fight. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't take anything away from Martin or add to it that he defended it however many times I had the belt for 3 years or would have lost it immediately after. That man was a champion before he had the belt wrapped around his waist. I feel the same way about myself. I'm sure Garry feels the same way about himself. That's the way a true martial artist is approaching it. That's the way a confident, strong mindset fighter is going to walk into the cage with. And it's my job to take that away from him. It's his job to take that away from me.
That's interesting. You mentioned Martin. And Garry, I want to ask you about this because, folks, if you don't know, Garry Tonon is a geek when it comes to analyzing fights. I mean, this guy will sit there and watch every fight. He goes super nerd, super geek, and he breaks it down in that amazing mind of his. It's like, you know, Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind. Instead of mathematics, though, it's about fighting. So you've no doubt watched Thanh Le versus Martin Nguyen a number of times. And Garry, do you believe that Thanh Le was getting effectively beaten by Martin before Thanh Le began the knockout process? Because some people say that if Thanh Le had not begun that knockout process and caught Martin with that first stunning shot, that Martin was winning the fight quite handily.
If you replace the word round with the word fight, then I agree with what you're saying. But fight, no, I disagree. I would say that that Thanh was indefinitely winning. I believe that the knockout happened in the third round, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe Thanh was winning the fight actually very decisively leading into the third round. And I believe that Martin changed his strategy a little bit in the third round. And I believe that when he did so, it caught Thanh off guard a little bit. And it took Thanh a little bit of time to recover from that surprise or whatever the case may be. After he did, he managed to, you know, catch him and end the fight. But I would argue that as a whole, and this isn't just, by the way, this isn't just me trying to play nice. This is my genuine understanding of the fight and the way that I've watched it many times so far. I believe that Martin posed a real danger to Thanh in the third fight, and I believe that it's very possible, depending upon certain circumstances, that Martin could have ended the fight in the third round the same way that Thanh did. I just believe that Thanh recomposed himself and did the damage that he needed to do to end that fight in the third round. I do believe, though, however, and this is actually something I think Thanh said in one of our previous interviews. I mean, Thanh was cracking Martin hard in these first two rounds. He was doing some damage. I mean, Martin was shaking his head, he was shaking it off and acting like it wasn't a big deal. But like, I mean, he was getting hit. So to say that I believe that Thanh wasn't winning that fight and then like kind of got a lucky punch or something, if that's what you're asking, no, I don't agree with that. But I will agree that Martin surprised in the third round, overwhelmed him a little bit in the third round, and it took Thanh a little bit of time to recompose himself and get that victory in the third round. I will say that. I will say that as a whole, if you look at the whole fight, it looks like a competitive fight because when you include the third round. If you were just looking at the first two rounds, I would say it's not even a close fight. I would actually argue that Thanh absolutely dominated the fight. But if you look at all three rounds, I think it's a very competitive fight. I think either man, could win or lose at any given point in time. And of course, that was the whole fight. So that's the way that I look at it. And man, I mean, at some point in time after I take this title from Thanh, I want to see those two fight again because I want to see that again, man. Because I think it could go a different way. I'd love to see that. Hell, I'd love to see that 2 or 3 more times just to see exactly who really is the most dominant one between the two of them. Because I really do believe that with certain fighters, as you start to get close to the upper echelon of who the best is, that it takes a few fights to really see, who's actually the best. I don't necessarily believe that through one performance, you can always see who's better. There's so much that can happen in mixed martial arts, man. It's a really wild game. So yeah, sorry. I think I've been going on with my answer a little bit too long, but I'm just going to cut myself off right there.
Thanh Le, I want to ask you, when we see grapplers like Garry transition to mixed martial arts and start to really dedicate themselves to striking, often and it hasn't happened to Garry yet, but often it can lead to their demise because the grappling champions start to think that they're boxers. start to think that they're kickboxers or Muay Thai fighters, and they want to start to stand and trade and play the striking game and show everyone that, hey, I can box, I can weave, I can, duck a punch, I can leg kick, I can body kick, I can head kick. Do you think you may be able to suck Garry into that game in December and maybe challenge his ego? Because, Garry's been relying more and more on his striking as his fights have gone on in one championship.
No, I don't. I think he's done a really good job in his developmental stages. He knows how to get good at something. I know how to get good at stuff. That's what we do, right? So he knows who he can test his striking against. He's done it in the cage and looked pretty good. You know what I mean? He's doing the right things. He's staying safe. He's exploring that side of his game so he could get more comfortable, get ring time, get time in there against somebody who's trying to take your fucking head off, right? But he knows this is a lot on the line. It's a championship bout, so I don't think he's gonna take any chances. I think he's gonna go out there and do what he does best and try to get his finish and try to do what he does to win this fight and get this belt and be world champion. I think I don't think he's gonna play around. I don't think he's going to have to do stuff, right, to be able to close the distance, to be able to control the ring, things like that, and that's part of the game. That's why we're fighting. But I just I don't think he's going to go out there and try to spend 2 or 3 rounds on the feet. I think he's going to go out there and implement his game plan. Now, does that involve striking? Yes. Does my game plan involve some grappling? Yes. That's just, we are in a mixed martial arts fight. That's just the way it's going to have to be. If I just go out there and try to box this man, we're gonna have a problem. If he goes out there and just tries to strike with me, he might have a problem, and that's what we're counting on. So I don't think he didn't get good at something by being an idiot. Obviously, the man's a smart man. He's researched, he's watched TV, he understands fighting. He's going to go out there and do the right thing to get this belt. And that's what we're counting on. I want to fight the biggest, baddest Garry possible. And that's the whole reason I got into this damn sport, so I could fight guys like you, dudes that are fucking dangerous, and I'm dangerous, and we're going to go in there, and somebody's going to fuck somebody up.
Garry, I just want a simple yes or no answer for this, because I know that I've got to curb you sometimes. Do you visualize how you are going to finish a fight?
Yes.
Okay. Follow up to that. Have you visualized at all a scenario where you knock out Tunley on the feet?
Yes, absolutely. Do you want me to expand on that, or do you want that to be?
You can expand on that, please.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, I have absolutely visualized that. I think it's a big missing piece of the puzzle for certain guys, especially specialists. I think it's really important for all specialists in mixed martial arts, which, some people are, some people aren't. Some people are just mixed martial artists. Other people have like real specialties in, whether it be striking or whether it be grappling, like myself. And I think sometimes what that leads to, no matter what they actually say on camera, when, we're on camera right now, right? No matter what they actually say on camera, because sometimes they might mislead you on camera. The truth is the only way they visualize the fight ending is the way that they are most comfortable with. And I think if that's the only way that I know how to end a fight, by the time I get to a championship level, it's one thing if this was my first professional fight. That would be reasonable, actually. It would be reasonable in my first professional fight to believe that the only way I'm going to beat the guy is to submit him. Reasonable. I think actually in my first professional fight, I TKO'd the guy. I think that's actually what happened. But it would have been reasonable for me to believe that was the only way I was going to walk out of there, because, hell, that was all my experience. But I think once you get to championship level, if you don't have a plan B, and I realistically at championship level, I think you should have a plan C. If you don't have at least 1 or 2 other options besides what you're the best at, I think you're probably not preparing adequately. I really don't. I think that you have to understand, just like Thon understands that I'm watching every single one of his fights. He's watching every single one of my fights. He obviously understands that I'm a grappling specialist, all of these things. Like, when people know what your main threat is, it makes it very difficult to execute that main threat. And this works the same way in jiu-jitsu when you're doing pure jiu-jitsu. Let's say, somebody identifies that I'm a leg lock expert, and they know if they just want to protect their legs, they can do things that makes it really, really hard for me to leg lock them. And if I don't have anything else I can beat that guy with, I'm in trouble. So absolutely, I visualize a place where I could knock Thanh Le out, and more than likely, it will be because of dual threats. And we call this dilemmas or trilemmas, depending upon how many different problems we create by a given situation. But it'll be a dilemma-based system where if Thanh gets too cagey and he's too afraid of the takedown, he's too afraid to be in a place where he's willing to get in a grappling situation with me, it's going to make it so that every time he's even thinking about me trying to take him down, he's distracted, and I'll be able to place a strike somewhere where normally it would never have hit him, but it'll be because I level changed and I'm able to come back up top and hit him with something because he's afraid of that takedown. So absolutely, I imagine situations where I either TKO or KO Thanh Le in this fight. And for anybody that thinks that that's not the case, I disagree. I think I'm going to prove you wrong. We'll see how it goes.
Garry, I want to ask you, because it intrigues me. Again, short answer. What's the visual?
Oh, the visual. My fist slowly making impact with the tip of his jaw as the spit and mouthpiece flies out of his mouth and blood pours all over the side of the cage and hits all three of the judges right in the eyes with drops of blood. They all go blind just for a second. and the crowd is just dead silent. You can hear a pin drop in the stadium, and then his head goes towards the canvas and bounces 2-3 times.
When have you ever heard a prediction like that? When have you ever...
And I start screaming.
Garry Tonon, you've got a job as a Hollywood fight choreographer when you retire from fighting, my friend. But in all seriousness, Thanh Le, I'm going to ask you the same thing. Champ, do you visualize, yes or no, how you're going to finish an opponent?
Yes.
Okay, so what's the visual for you? Do you visualize submitting Garry Tonon? Have you visualized that?
That has played through my head 100%.
How
visualizing winning the fight on the ground would be a better answer.
Okay, so you're saying you visualized ground and pounding Garry Tonon?
Plenty of options. Yeah, obviously, when you visualize things, you have things that pop up in my head that aren't my A game. Like I try to let my mind fight itself, right? Like you visualize some things and some shit pops up that you didn't expect. Like that is what visualization is for. Like I'm reacting, I'm doing a mock fight in my head and things happen. Whether we end up on the ground, whether we end up on my back, whether I end up pounding him out, whatever the case may be, those things happen when you do, in my opinion, when you do visualization properly.
Okay, folks, we're going to go to the media in just a moment. But once again, earlier on in the interview, first up, I did ask both men for their predictions. Garry Tonon believing he will rear naked choke submit Thanh Le for the championship belt come 1X in December. Thanh Le believes he will do the headache maker, the head kick knockout on Garry Tonon to retain the strap come 1X December. Let's go to the media now, and we'll go first to Dylan Balka from My MMA News. Dylan, please ask your question.
Hey there, I appreciate you taking my call. My question was for Thanh because I'd posited a similar question to Garry with there being multiple timeline shifts with this bout. I'm curious, were there different periods of taking the foot off the proverbial gas, like trying to avoid a certain level of paralysis by analysis, like maybe burning yourself out, study too much of Garry Tonon, as it were?
No, not at all. I don't think well, in my opinion, there is no such thing as just knowing too much about your opponent, because you have to, compartmentalize certain things. And, oh, he likes to do that. He likes to do this. We're going to try to react this way and that way. But, it's a fight. So you're going to react. Your moves are going to hit by itself, and we have to train that way. And the more time you get to analyze, the more time you get to drill, the more time you get to do live rounds, situationals, the better. I mean, in my opinion, it couldn't be, and unless you let your mind get in the way of things, it couldn't be a negative thing. But that's how we kind of reframe things for us, for it to be a positive experience. I've been through a bunch of ups and downs, and in my career, and there's been timeline pushbacks, there's been opponent switches, opponent backouts, things like that. And I'm grateful for those experiences, because you get to let things roll off the shoulders a little bit, and not a ton of things like get you riled up. Like, I get more time, cool. Let's make that a positive spin. In sparring, I punch you, it's good for me. You punch me, I can make that good for me one way or another. Like, we've got to be able to do that as a competitor, I think, as an experienced competitor, you know.
Thank you, Dylan. Okay, let's go to Leon Jennings from Asian Persuasion MMA. Leon.
Hey guys, just wondering, who do you plan on having in your corner on fight night in Singapore?
Let's go Tan Lee first.
Okay, I'm gonna have my same old corner, my brother Vin Lee, and my coach from New Orleans, Sean Gayton. Those two guys.
Gary?
So fortunately, we get two corners for this match. Previous matchup during COVID, we were only able to get one. So I was only able to bring my training partner, Yuting. So Yuting Hong will be my one corner, who's my training partner. So I'll be able to have somebody to do all my drills and my sparring and stuff leading up to the fight while we're out there cooped up in a hotel and, you know, on training mats, everything like that. And John Danaher will also be there.
You speaking about Martin Nguyen earlier, obviously he's in a tricky situation, coming off 2 knockout losses. Who do you think he should face next? What do you think he should do next? Or should he do anything different? Possibly face the loser of your matchup in December? That's
a good question. I don't know. I haven't really thought about that, to be honest with you. I've got my hands tied with this dude down here, but you know, I don't know about opponent wise. I don't think the loser of this matchup would be the ideal opponent, though, as far as rankings and things like that go. But I'd said this in a previous interview. I think he should do, you know, the same thing he's been doing, what got him to the big show, what got him to the belt, what got him retaining the title over and over again. And, you know, just because you happen to get caught twice, you know, like, obviously work on the holes in your game and improve what you think you need to improve. But you don't need to do a huge switch in camps or this and that and change the way you think about fighting. I mean, he's done a really good job, and I think he can still be successful and a high level fighter and work his way up back to the belt, hopefully, so I can fight him again.
Thank you very much, Leon Jennings. Okay, fellas, we're about to wrap this up now. We've been going for half an hour, and we could go for another hour with you two. It's been magnificent. Gary, I want to pose this question to you before we go. Who has the more pressure on them, do you think? The guy who's holding the belt and defending it for the first time, or the guy who people have called cocky, eccentric, who predicted he would become a world champion years ago and is trying to maintain an undefeated record? Who's the more pressure on?
That sounds like a little bit of a loaded question, to be fair. But but anyway, tough to say. It's hard to put yourself in either person's shoes to really say one way or the other. I'll tell you what, I feel a ton of pressure for sure to win. I think anytime, especially somebody who's undefeated, I think he did try to move away from the noise at one point. But what was I going to say? So I think, man, that pressure, there's just absolutely a huge pressure for me. Like I said, I think there's a huge pressure for anybody who would be undefeated in any of their fights, but especially once you reach the pinnacle of the sport in your organization, you're fighting for a world championship and you're undefeated. I mean, it's got to be pretty close to like peak pressure, in my opinion. I feel a lot of pressure in a lot of different ways. I mean, I feel pressure for the fact that I'm undefeated. I feel pressure for the fact that, like you said, maybe I've had relatively few fights before I got here. I feel pressure for the fact that, my team have been pioneers in the sport of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I feel as though I carry that flag, and that when I go and fight, every single fight, regardless of whether or not it's for the championship, but the championship is a big damn deal. That's a lot of pressure to carry, that I have to, I'm right now, I'm the only member of my team that fights MMA, you know what I mean? And I'm carrying that flag solo, my everything that we are essentially is on my back right now, walking into the fight. So I would say, from a bias perspective, obviously, that there's absolutely more pressure on my shoulders than there is on Thon's. I do think that it's not to deny that there's pressure there, in any way, shape, or form. But yes, I think there's a lot more riding on me in terms of winning this fight than there is Tan.
Thank you, Garry Tonon. Tan Le, final word from you. Tan, time and time again, when you've appeared at one championship, you have stolen the show. You've been the showstopper. Your fights have been full of highlight reel moments. You have finished everyone so far. Does that factor into your mind at all? I mean, on the biggest show in history where we've got Rodtang and Demetrius Johnson in the main event in a super fight, are you going to try and steal the show of shows? Does that factor in your mind at all?
Does it do any type of pressure or anything like that? No, I'm going to fight the way I fight. It just so happens that the way I fight puts on some serious knockouts, and I'm happy about that, right? And I'm happy I put on an exciting show. You guys are going to need to tune in. It's going to be, I'm going to try to take this man's head off his shoulders, just like I do every opponent that steps in front of me. That's my job. He's got his agenda. I've got my agenda. I like putting fists on people. I like putting my shin on people. That's just the way it goes. And it's not going to change for this fight. Nothing changes that. That's the way I go about my martial arts. And this is going to be fireworks from second 1 to minute 25 if it goes that long, which it's not going that long. You are going to finish me or I'm knocking you out. That's just plain and simple. That's the way it's going to go. I'm excited about that. It wakes me up. It gets me in the gym. That's why I do this shit. We've said this over and over again, but I'm dead fucking serious. This is the most excited I've been about a fight. I'll tell you that. It's classic martial arts. It's fucking awesome.
Well, there you have it, folks. The champion, Tan Le, the challenger, Garry Tonon. I think it could be the showstopper come December at 1X in the biggest one championship show of all time, where we'll have Bibiano Fernandez versus John Lineker for the bantamweight title, the featherweight strap between these two men, and of course that Super Rules showdown between Demetrius Johnson and Rodtang, where it is, of course, first round Muay Thai, second round mixed martial arts, third round Muay Thai, and fourth round mixed martial arts. Garry, Tan Le, thank you very much for joining us. To all the media and fans around the world, thank you for joining us.